Okay, hello to everybody listening and watching us out there. Welcome to Melanin and Moonlight. I'm one of your co-hosts, Tyrell Collins.
I'm the other Vernon Scott, and welcome everybody. Welcome to the show. Yay,
Yes,
another week, another week closer to the end of the year. It is literally August.
exactly.
Oh, that is
Exactly.
crazy.
Exactly. But Vernon, how have you been?
Things have been good. In my living room. I finally got just about everything unpacked. I still have my issues with the washer and dryer situation, but that's going to be fixed whenever it gets fixed. And speaking of which, the coin laundry places, the
Hmm.
prices are ridiculous. Like
Oh my
I wanted
goodness.
I, I literally didn't want to drive like the hour to go to my brother's and wash for free. So I was like, let me just go to the local laundromat. It's one like 5 minutes from me. So I was like, let me just go. It took $12. Like, what are we doing?
Oh my goodness.
What is these prices? Oh my God. Anyways, how are you doing?
I am doing well. I've had like a very, relaxing summer overall. And things are gonna get, a little bit busy, a little bit hectic for, us as teachers, the start of the year is happening and all those good things, same old conversations, new light, and on the wheel it spins.
Right, right. I've been thinking about shifting. Because they sent out an email asking for adjuncts, and I was like,
Mm,
I'm teaching a humanities class, but then I'm just like, at the same time, where do you have the time? Where do you have the
exactly.
time?
Exactly.
So, mm-mm-mm.
Mm.
But you're excited. When does class start for you?
We start back the 24th, but of course, as far as faculty goes, we have to start like this week because, like we have all types of meetings and, got to get
Yeah.
all of that started. So technically, classes start the week of the 24th, but we technically start back in this week.
More power to you. More power to you.
So yeah.
All right. To jump into the things. What we got?
Yes. So yeah, we wanted to like really kind of delve into the recent Jay-Z situation and him deciding to partner with Target for the nature of an edition of his album recently and kind of sparking a lot of controversy within particularly, the Black community because of the fact that, last year in 2025, there was, a lot of um, backlash and upheaval about, the nature of DEI goals, things like that, and Target, kind of pulling away from their DEI initiatives and things like that. So, people in general, not to say all people, but entered a bit of a boycott. And so, yeah, it's just, it's very interesting with the nature of how this has gone. So I guess just to give, just a little bit more context. So again, Target faced this kind of organized consumer pressure, right, back in 2025, announcing like it was concluding, I believe like it was like a 3 year kind of DEI, kind of goal and initiative. And it was
Mhm.
ending like it's, racial equity in action and changing initiatives, all those types of things. So Target maintains that it completed its commitment to spend, I believe it's about 2 billion with black owned businesses, but of course, many consumers viewed the view the broader kind of retreat as a kind of political calculation after years of using inclusion to build, this kind of loyalty among, black, about among black businesses around LGBTQ, initiatives and other, progressive shoppers, things like that. And, so this kind of aspect of Jay-Z, when he announced, I believe it was in June, several months after, I believe Pastor Jamal Bryant, I think that's his name. Yeah. Jamal Bryant's, after he declared like the campaign officially concluded, in March, I think in March of this year. Yeah. Claiming that, Target had met its, most of its demands and everything like that. So, um, yeah, so the nature of Jay-Z, how Jay-Z enters this conversation is he partnered with Target after one major coalition ended its official kind of fast in a way. But while or the other organizers and consumers continued withholding support and the company's relationship with Black communities remains deeply contested. Uh, Jay-Z kind of said on stage essentially was, and I'm paraphrasing this because again, you can, go online, watch the clip for yourself, make up your own mind. But essentially, to kind of paraphrase, he was saying that, you criticize me for Target, but you shop at Amazon and these apps like Facebook, like Facebook with like the post Meta. You watch YouTube through Google and probably use other corporations that have made similarly objectable choices. And that's a, factual foundation, beneath that point. Target was not alone in retreating their DEI efforts. As we know, Walmart, Amazon, Google, McDonald's, numerous, other corporations reduced or renamed or eliminated, kind of diversity commitments amid, these, political and legal pressures. However, Jay-Z is facing the backlash because he can't, he doesn't understand about, well, why is he the one that's being targeted? Because to him, it is, oh, I'm a businessman, so I made a business decision. So the criticism of Jay-Z is being substantial, but I think the loudest kind of accusations really go beyond, like like this evidence that we're being presented. So just, your initial thoughts about how you feel about, okay, we try as a community to stand in solidarity when it comes to this whole Target aspect. But then we have Jay Z, who is a very much a mass figure, a part of the music and Black community, make a deal for the nature of the collection of his vinyl, edition to celebrate an anniversary, um, and why he chose to work with Target.
Hmm.
So just your initial thoughts about it.
Ooh, I got many, 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 many things to
Mhm.
say. I want to first start off with like Target as well. Like the decision itself, like their choice of rolling back the initiatives was just in poor taste in general. Like I would say, like in their release of their decision and whatnot, they s- they do mention, okay, yeah, we're getting rid of DEI, but at the same
Mhm.
time, they're saying we're reworking this into a different type of let's say a different department of our programming. So instead of being DEI, it is the outreach of marginalized groups. So it's a different name. Granted, that wasn't the name. So I'm like, you made this decision in order to cozy up or to
Mhm.
gain some type of political capital. And that in and of itself means we don't have the backbone to really protect and honor some of the deals that were made. And to their credit, they did not, to my knowledge, remove any of the contracts that they've had already, fostered with a lot of Black-owned businesses, which is
Mhm.
great. But at the same time, how do we have these contracts with marginalized groups? And then because things get a little bit testy in the waters, we're just like, okay, we don't. we could just throw this all away. So that reads as inauthentic,
Mhm.
because we did this to Virtue Signal, which is a corporation. The virtual signaling, we see it every Pride Month. So it's like
Mhm.
it's nothing really. We know this is a part of that, but it Target actually looked like they were putting some work behind their actions, behind their statements.
Mhm.
And I think that's the thing that hurt a lot of Black consumers, to see
Mhm.
that, oh, we're just going to, not participate in the thing called DEI any longer.
Mhm.
And then on top of that, when this boycott started, and I think a lot of the leadership are taking leadership on things that no one put them in power for. Like even
Mhm.
with the Jamal Bryant situation, and he came out, oh, we can shop at Target again. And a lot of people were just like, who are you to tell
Mhm.
us that this thing is over? Like, who
Mhm.
put you in the power to say these things? Regardless of how you may have, in this particular state, built a coalition for the purposes of boycotting Target, that's great. But I need you to say, hey, for the organization that I'm focusing on, that I did, this is not the Black community as a whole, we are no longer boycotting Target, but
Mhm.
y'all continue to do what you're doing because it's
Mhm.
working, right? Because we have people in Minneapolis who started the boycott, because I think that's where the Target headquarters is as well. They
Mhm.
have their own movement that they got going on. So now we're having this mixed messaging that's happening. We got Nina Turner and her federal thing that she got going on.
Mhm.
And she's like, we didn't say anything. Well, actually, she was a part of that conversation too, but that's another thing. And now here we have Jay-Z saying, hey, it's over on my from how I see it, right? And I think a lot of this is stems from tone deafness, meaning
Mhm.
we're not putting our ear with the community to see what's going on, why this is a pain point for a lot of people.
Right.
And it's okay to have, the exclusive rights of your album to just be pushed out in this one location. But you
Mhm.
also have to think about, okay, what is the big financial decision in terms of people who may want to, you know, purchase this CD?
Right.
If people continue to boycott, are they going to be purchasing it? Like you didn't do you over extended your influence in this moment to think that just because I happen to be Jay-Z, I can make people
Yeah.
were willing to not go see Beyonce.
Mhm.
And you think people who are mega fans of Beyonce will not go see you, Jay-Z?
Mhm.
You know, the influence is different.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see, and that's the thing. And to speak to like the logical side of this, story, because we always like to we come with our emotions, obviously we come with our feelings, but we also try to come with the logic as well.
Mhm.
So the logical point in this, for people that are listening and watching us, it's the thing of we can't factually claim, of course, that Jay-Z approached Target because he saw Black consumers leaving or personally promised to break the boycott or receive some enormous secret payoff. That has not been publicly, like
Mhm.
established or anything like that. What we know is Target became the exclusive retailer for this, collector's vinyl edition of, commemorating that what I think this is the 30th anniversary of his album with, special packaging, this kind of vinyl in, the thing about the vinyl insert. And, so the financial terms and the origin of that arrangement has never been publicly said. And
Mhm.
the thing about what Jay-Z said to audience, to me is giving a very false equivalence. And I thought about three to four very good reasons why I kind of wrote my initial thoughts down about what he said about, oh, like you criticize me, but like Target's not alone and look at these other companies. My first kind of pushback to that point is Necessity is different from promotion, right? An
Mm-hmm.
ordinary person who uses, may use Amazon because they don't drive, right? Or they live far from other retailers, or, they require a particular product, or, whatever that is. Someone may remain on Facebook because that's where their family is, that's where their organizations and church communities and clients are, or whatever that is. That person's participation may be imperfect, but it's often constrained. To me, Jay Z did not need Target to obtain
Mm-hmm.
groceries or get medication or have transportation or employment. So that is an optional collector's product commemorating your 30-year-old album. And I don't say that shade because that's a very big accomplishment.
It
It's
is.
not
It
meant to be
is.
shade. But he and his business partners presumably had other distribution possibilities, another retailer, several retailers. You could, explore independent record stores, right? His own website. If you wanted to do direct sales through Rock Nation, or a non-exclusive release, right? So that's kind of like my first kind of like pushback to that. It's like I'm pretty sure that you had other options, right?
Mm-hmm.
My second pushback is purchasing is very different from endorsing. Somebody buying toothpaste at a corporation is not necessarily an endorsement of that corporation's values. Entering an exclusive branded collaboration, now that is different, right? Because if we're thinking about what that does, it gives company culture, material, publicity, legitimacy, all these things. Target was not merely one store where where the vinyl happens to appear, right? Target exclusive is a
Mm-hmm.
part of the product's branding. So the collaboration allows Target to say in effect, "Oh, come celebrate this foundational Black cultural work with us," right? And that matters when you have Black consumers who are deliberately withholding their spendings because they believe the company had abandoned commitments made to their community.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just, like, and then let's just be honest. Let's talk about again Jay-Z in the nature of his aspect in general. Him as a billionaire has greater freedom to absorb a sacrifice. Someone making, I'm just going to throw it out there, like $35,000 a year, may have to choose the lowest price or the closest store or the only delivery service that is available. Jay Z, as a
Mm-hmm.
billionaire, can refuse one optional transaction without risking his rent, his food, his health insurance, his family stability. As a wealthy person, you are not obligated to make every sacrifice. You know, for a if he was, I think, more of a struggling independent artist, target distribution might determine whether or not a project of his reaches like his national audience. So for me, Jay-Z, like, Target was not the difference between your survival or your disappearance from public
Mm-hmm.
eye. Like, so
Exactly.
don't project that like there was no other options on the table.
Exactly. And to deepen the thing about how why this is tone deaf is because tone deaf is because when you really think about it, Jay-Z is not asking the why behind
Mhm.
these purchases. Like even with the Target boycott, people recognize that there are certain supplies that you can only get at Target,
Mhm.
especially if it's some of the black-owned products that they happen to have in the store. If you don't have access to those websites, right? Like if I want to get Tabitha Brown seasonings, I'm going to have to go to Target. So,
Mhm.
because I don't think the website is even still up. But anyways, but like I know that for this particular product, okay, I may have to venture out to this place. I may have to venture out to Amazon for this thing. However, the vast majority of my grocery shopping is going to be isolated to this particular area. Um, and I don't take any hit from Jay-Z's, broader message. Like if you're gonna, shop at Amazon, blah blah blah. I haven't really shopped at Amazon in over 3, 4, 5 years. So
Mm,
even when I get gift cards, I give it to friends because I don't like Amazon. However, if there's something that I really need that I could only get Amazon, I know
right.
that this is going to be something I have to actually engage with to get that thing because I need that for myself.
Mm,
And being that he's so far separated, and like you said, he has so many different options, you don't have to rely on Amazon to get anything that you want. You can actually just call the CEO of that business and be like, "Hey, what y'all got over here?" And they can ship it to your house. Like your his need for shopping looks completely different for other
mm,
people. Um, he can have his own garden, his backyard tended by workers to make sure that his food is farm to table in that manner. Most people's grocery stores, or a lot of people's grocery store happens to be a Dollar General, happens to be a Family Dollar. So it is, to me, making such a statement just reduces the choice, minimizes the choices that a lot of people who are struggling or happens to be in food deserts, like what their lived experience happens to be. And
exactly.
for me, that's where a lot of my problem with it comes
Mm,
from. And I watched this one creator, I forget her name. It was on IG, black woman. She mentioned how well, I too was not surprised, but she mentioned like in a way, Jay-Z may see this as a way for him to help black people because he already identifies as a capitalist, and for him, anything that helps enrich the black community's pockets, as well as his pockets, leans toward support for black people, and making this deal could look like him being in support of the black community because at the end of the day, this is spreading more black dollars, right?
exactly.
This is spreading more black um, connections or products. So I I signed this deal to be exclusively through Target. Now people are being more, they're familiarizing themselves with other Target exclusives that happen
Mm,
to be Black businesses. And then let me go ahead and, patronize that so that Black business gets grown. But what we could have also done here is just send a list of, hey, all these Black businesses that are here at Target, I want my fan base to know this is what you need to do and where
mm,
you need to shop at, for those purposes. Wow, you can also access my um, album
mm.
here as well, but I want to highlight those other Black businesses. Who is on his PR?
Exactly. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the aspect about capitalism because I was thinking about that and, thinking about his philosophy. But before getting into that, I think one of the things I was seeing about when I was looking at the comments and reactions, to this was really this conversation about, believing if like Jay-Z is kind of like a sellout in a way because of this. And I think that that really depends on what you mean by selling out. Like for me, I think working with a large corporation doesn't automatically make any artist, in particular black artists, a sellout. You can't, any type of artist cannot reach mass audience without interacting with powerful distributors, venues, streaming companies, all of that. A standard that prohibits all mainstream participation would isolate, especially black artists, while leaving corporations basically untouched. However, I believe also nor is making money itself a betrayal. Obviously, as we know from the nature of obviously of black music and black history, we have always been historically underpaid. dispossessed for, Black artists receiving their masters, exploited by labels, denied ownership, all those things. So to me, I've always kind of, and even in this situation, I believe for me, a very strong definition of selling out to me is using language or using the language, loyalty, or, collective struggle of a community to build, some sort of personal authority, then employing that authority to help an institution withstand pressure from that same community. And
Mm,
especially if you're doing it without offering a kind of comparable public benefit or, something like that. And so the thing
mm,
about this is that this is not just, okay, Jay-Z's a rapper who made a retail deal. No, the problem is Jay-Z is a billionaire artist who frequently treats his ascent, to stardom and fame and things like that as evidence of a black collective progress used obviously by his cultural influence in a way that some organizers believed weakened the collective, kind of economic struggle. And when you mention the nature of, the thing about capitalism, it's kind of like, I feel like with Jay Z, because I've listened to Jay Z a couple of times, just, obviously in passing and in clips. And I think that he has this philosophy where, and again, it's very, I'm not gonna even say like it's yeah, it's biased, but obviously he can only come from his perspective. So it's not any,
mhm,
shit on him. But I think he comes from this philosophy that, it's like, okay, you enter a room from which, obviously black people have been excluded from. You accumulate your wealth and ownership. You place, black artists and workers and, all these things into, these powerful institutions. You redirect some of those resources to reform, community initiatives. And then you demonstrate that, of course, black people, we can control, rather than merely serve, these capitalist, kind of ideas. But I think where the kind of schism kind of exists is not recognizing the limitation of that as well. You
mhm,
know, that as a black person, reaching the top of an institution does not necessarily alter the institutional relationship to most black people. Representation at the level of celebrity partnership can exist with low wages, continued discriminatory practices, political retreat,
mhm,
obviously, abandonment of, these community commitments. So it is to say that yes, black wealth is not inherently collective power, right? It becomes collective power only when it changes ownership patterns. It changes working conditions for people. It changes the institutional behavior and all of those things. So, and again, it's not to say like, oh, it's on Jay-Z to, specifically do this, but that is a part of the conversation that I think that when people at his level, when they get to be at that level, because you are only one person, you think that, okay, well, hey, if I did this, you can do this. And that's not
mhm.
necessarily a bad mentality to have, but you also have to think about, uh, well, what that's not going to be the case for everyone.
Exactly,
You know,
exactly. And one of the things that immediately came up when you were talking, one, that definition of sellout, what you ate with that one, but I'm going to jump back to that in a second. Um, it was, you know, Jay-Z and his creation of the financial literacy schools, right? Where, for him, escape from oppression is how he became wealthy, right? I learned how to manage money. I learned how to make money, blah, 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 blah. But a lot of these things happen after you gain significant access to money, as well as being having access to sit in certain chairs where you were able to learn these things. And you got lucky. A lot of people forget that when it comes to, especially how the music industry was back in the day, a lot of it was on luck. A lot was
Mhm.
on a person gaining enough popularity to be seen and noticed by other professionals. Like many people who've, I can't really put myself in this, but many people who followed Jay-Z's career remember the days when he was slanging dope in order for him to make an album, to pay for studio time and whatnot, which, it's cool, whatever. I ain't judging you what you got to do. But like,
Mhm.
to think that financial literacy alone would be the thing to set people to freedom, we're excluding the other things that oppression happens to, keep us back. We're forgetting that we need political literacy as well. We need media literacy. We need to know how to read.
Yes, exactly.
We need to know a lot of these things in order for us
Exactly.
to be able to gain close to the freedoms that Jay-Z has without just having bukus of money,
Yeah.
right? And that's
And
the thing that I feel like he tends to forget the most.
yeah, exactly. And I think that he could have used, not necessarily that when he made this announcement to like the audience, but just like in general, I think that the reason why people have such visceral reactions when things like this are happening is because you're not taking this as a teaching opportunity. Right. So when
Hmm.
people ask, okay, well, what could he have done differently? I'm not even in business. And I'm like, I could have think of five different things you could have done differently.
Okay,
I mean,
who is on the
there
PR?
were several responses like you could have had. He could have declined Target the exclusivity of Target and sold to the collector's, edition through multiple resellers. He could have distributed directly and partnered with black-owned record stores. He could have conditioned that Target agreement on a public commitment involving black suppliers, HBCUs, community investment, whatever. He could have explained that the deal was negotiated after, one major boycott coalition formally ended and provided a timeline, right? So again, he could have just, in some roundabout say, I understand why this decision hurts people. I believe that engagement can produce more than separation. And here is what Target agreed to do because we came to the table. Again,
Hmm.
that's not something that's going to satisfy everybody. You can't satisfy everybody on the planet. That's not your job. Nor should you even take that responsibility on, Jay-Z.
Facts,
That's
facts.
not on you. But it would at least demonstrate that you had an inside strategy in making this deal. And maybe you did. Maybe there are things that we are do not know and may never know. And that's really your business. But for you to come on a platform and say to your audience, oh yeah, but just other corporations are objectable too, and I'm more successful than my critics. That's not the move.
Hmm.
That's just not
And,
the
and
move.
and that's when hubris steps in because one we forget that we are dealing with real people who have real lives who may not be willing to deal with this BS because of their circumstances have changed. Now, if we're in a place where everybody is up economically speaking, yes, we could say some shady mess like, oh, my haters, they broke because everybody else who's in the
Mhm.
audience may have some coins where they can, is not much of a sacrifice. And when you say that, they're like, yeah, my haters be all on me because I got the money too. And they will
Mhm.
resonate with you. See, we need to bring Blue Ivy back into the PR team to help her daddy out because she was not in the room when they made this decision. I'm just saying. But again, like it could have easily have been, like you said, just we could have had a different rollout of in if we were going to decide Target is the place, we could have also had that list of other Black-owned businesses to support.
Mhm.
That's going to be at Target. I decided to make this. I intentionally chose to partner with Target
Mhm.
for the sole purpose of highlighting these Black-owned businesses who have been losing out on
Mhm.
funds during this boycott, and I want them to be successful. Here's the list. When you go into Target to buy my album, which I want you to do. I
Yeah,
also want you to add one of these items from these black-owned businesses to your cart as well. Maybe two, maybe three, whatever your finances can allow, add that to your cart. No, yes, there will be people who will be upset because who said Target was over, the boycott was over. But at the same time, you know what? This is giving me an initiative to get the album that I was already planning on getting anyways, and then also support something black. So I'm walking out of Target feeling like my guilty conscience has been reduced a little bit more. I'm buying into this. Like, buy in, people.
exactly. Exactly.
PRT, where are we at? Uh,
Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, and just to, just wrap this up, I think the thing is that, again, to be accurate, one major target boycott coalition, declaring that its campaign is over in March, like again, who you to do that, but okay. But for this, vinyl was released, claiming that Target had met most of its demands, you know. And again, this is not something as simple as Jay-Z walking across one universal kind of recognized picket line. But he knew Target remained politically radioactive among many Black consumers, and he chose an
hmm
exclusive deal anyway. And so for me, the thing that what bothers me the most, I think, about this isn't necessarily, I think, the thing about Target itself, but it was that Jay-Z, you could have had an opportunity to explain what the partnership accomplished beyond selling the album. Again,
hmm
as we raise those many questions about, hey, did Target invest in any, agree to invest in anything? Again, black owned record stores, all these type of things. If his argument is that he works inside systems to change them, then show us that change. Bring us
hmm
into your mindset. Selling out what I think, what is it? He owns like part what, like Yankee Stadium or something like that. Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, proving that, yeah, okay, you powerful. All right, but it doesn't prove the target deal served anyone beyond you,
Right.
your
Exactly.
business partners, and things like that. So it's like, what did exclusively partnering with Target accomplish? That's what I.
hmm Yeah. And before we jump into Miss Wu Lady, I will say my last thing on Jay-Z, that I don't necessarily, especially in this moment, believe that he was a sellout.
Mm,
However, I did and do believe that he was a sellout when it came to the Colin Kaepernick situation.
mm,
And he did rebrand that situation in a very effective way that did end up benefiting a lot of Black artists. So kudos to him for that partnership there. But I will not forget where
mm.
you were at the start of that. I
That
will
is too
not
funny.
forget that.
That is too
But
funny.
anyways, switching
But
over to Miss Wu Lady. So for
yeah.
those who do not know what's going on the TikToks, because I'll be up in those nasty and interesting streets very often. So there's this woman on TikTok who goes by the title Woo Lady, and she was on live one day talking about how a lot of her tricks were just sending her things. I think they were sending her jets through her live. And for people who don't know what the jets mean, that's like a $40 investment in a TikTok live event, right?
Mm,
So when you send a little small icon, some of those are worth a certain dollar amount, some a penny, some a dollar, but the jets are $40 that you're sending to a person. So as this live is going on, and people who may not have the strongest financial backing are seeing, oh, she is receiving all these jets. Oh my God, she's getting them from these guys, these tricks, blah, 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 blah. They're feeling like, oh, there must be something that she knows that we don't know, and I want to, lean into her expertise so that I can too start making money the way that she's talking about. Like in the discussion, she's communicating how, oh, she doesn't get turned away at the clubs because they know who she is. and her tricks get her into places. They take care of her. They're buying her drinks, making sure that she's fed, making sure she's well dressed. You know, the lavish life of
mm,
the what some may consider a social media influencer, but the lavish life of someone who is in the game. And by in the game, I mean they're doing some kind of smex work. I can't say the words because you know they don't like
mm,
that word in the YouTube streets, and this is going to YouTube. So, um, a lot of these younger women are like fascinated by what they're seeing, and of course, when you are in a state of financial depravity where the US is in terms of our economy. People are wanting money. People need it to survive. People need it for food. I see this as an easy opportunity because how this person's advertising it online, I want to learn this. I want to learn the tricks of the game so I too can get some type of financial security, similar to what she's saying that she has.
mm.
So, of course, now Woo Lady done um, mentioned that, oh, well, hey, girls who are trying to learn the tricks of the game, meet me in Miami this time and we can go ahead and get your lifestyle started up so you too can be living lavishly, not knowing what she's really offering up for these young girls. So before we even jump deeper into this I don't know the word to use. Smostitution, let's say that.
Mhm.
This trafficking scheme that she's developing online in broad daylight. What are some of your thoughts of this situation?
Yeah, no, I thought this was really interesting because for everybody that doesn't know, I'm not on TikTok. So whenever we do TikTok comment, I got to definitely do my research, and find clips and stuff like that. And I again, thinking about wording and vocabulary, I think for me, the way I see it is that I think that she is recruiting. It's a very risky lifestyle in the nature of her message of like recruiting versus for me trafficking. I think that the connotation for me is different. So, like, based on some of the clips that I, kind of watched, it appears to be like recruiting women into like this, obviously, like you say, like this ideology and social practice, right? You go out alone or, with only one other woman, like you position yourself where, wealthy men gather, again, you make yourself socially approachable. You avoid large groups that, discourage guys from approaching, all that type stuff. So basically it's kind of like, hey, like come to Miami because, the city supposedly offers, this more access to rich men and, this luxury. That to me is more like, okay, you are putting out this message of recruitment that is a very risky lifestyle. I wouldn't necessarily go into the nature of sex trafficking, just personally for me, because I think that that has more of a specific meaning. Because to me, when you are moving into the work to the aspects of trafficking, that is coming through what we like to say as far as like commercial sex through like force, fraud, coercion, especially like even obviously if minors are involved, all those type of things. From the clips that I was seeing, and again, maybe I need to, watch more things like that. It did not seem like Wu Lady to me, from what I've seen, is not like arranging paid sexual encounters, receiving a percentage of these women's earnings, transporting, women for, these opportunities, controlling their housing or their money, threat, anything like that. So that would move me more into the mindset of, oh, okay, yeah, she is basically like facilitating trafficking, things like that. However, the clips that I did see is definitely establishing she has a very clear pattern of very reckless influence. So my initial thoughts was that, even though she may not be publicly proving to be like recruiting women for trafficking, but she is recruiting women into circumstances that can make them highly vulnerable to exploitation. Absolutely. And there's a lot of reasons why I think that the advice that is being given is very dangerous in its context. But those were just like some of my initial thoughts.
Gotcha, gotcha. I might have to send you some of those things. Well, it's hard because some of those be behind TikTok be acting weird for the links that you can and cannot send that people can
Mm,
watch offline. But anyways, so and I think that perspective, which I do see as value, and valid as well, comes from the lack of I guess the language you use, right? Because
mm,
when we call somebody a trick, we're aligning
mm,
ourselves with Smex work,
mm,
right? Because that's what we will call a person who, rather than call them a John, we'll call them a trick, and because
mm,
they're the trick, we're getting the money out of them, right? And she she frames it in a era of empowerment, where I'm gaining their money, I'm using them and all of that, putting her as a person in power, right?
mm,
And which there she may have that influence, not to deny that, but in the acts of bringing them there without known protections
mm,
are knowing that some of them may not have the finances to sustain a life or a weekend in Miami puts them in more dangers of being exploited beyond what she invites them to,
mm,
right? Like there was, I don't know the particular content creator that she was with, and she said it started off as a really good time,
mm,
but there as the night progressed and she's wanting to go to leave, Woo Lady is just trying to coerce her to stay longer and longer and longer, give her all these drugs, and then at one point she's in a car with a strange dude that she didn't even know. Luckily, well, at least from what I heard, there was not any assault that happened there, but it did put her in a very precarious situation where harm could have happened,
exactly.
right? And these are people who are paying money to spend time with this said individual as well, and she's not seeing that money.
Mm,
And whenever money is exchanged, there's a certain expectation of what that money is paying for, which even limits protections of someone if they were to go to like the police, because they're not going to see this as an assault or what have you. They're going to see this as, okay, you made a business deal with somebody, you didn't show up to your end of the bargain. Why are you here?
right.
We don't handle those types of situations. You can I guess try to sue them for the money, but this you consented to engaging in this action, and they didn't pay you.
Exactly.
What am I supposed to do with that? So it's like,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of setup there, and the in looking at her with limited information, she reads as a madam to me,
Mm,
that she's familiar with the ropes to bring people in, but she's not managing after they get to her. And
yeah.
she released them to other people to manage and
Right.
just,
Yeah.
put her
Yeah.
hands up
Because
with it.
Yeah, because it's interesting when I was looking at some of the clips, like, because one of the clips that I watched was this advice that, she was giving on like being approached, right? So, in that kind of retrospect, I was like, hmm, there's this imbalance that's here because this like approach, because like she talked about a lot, but I was really focused on this aspect of like the whole like go alone thing. And,
Mm-hmm.
like I was thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, that's actually, a useful kind of, like pickup advice or insight, but it's also very poor safety advice. So, like, there's like a social logic, right, behind that particular reservation, right? If we're thinking in a context about just being approached, right? Specifically for man on woman interaction, a man may feel more comfortable, right, approaching one woman, sitting alone, than walking into a group of, say, like 5 or 6 women, right? Larger groups can, appear, like socially closed, or you may have a little be a little anxious, or whatever that is. But the very thing that makes, I think, someone easier to approach can also make them easier to isolate as well. So when you're a part of a friend group, right, that that friend group is, you got witnesses, you got transportation, if you're with your friends, somebody's, pretty much like watching you drink, they may notice, some changes in behavior if something seems off, again, you have more people paying attention to things. So I think that in that particular clip that I was seeing, the advice was, it was like, oh, never to go anywhere alone. But like turning that kind of practical safety into fear, and can drift towards blaming victims for predators decisions. So I think a
Mm-hmm.
better kind of lesson, as I was listening to that video, I was like, no, the aspect is like, never let appearing available, right, require becoming, you know um materially independent, or unreachable, intoxicated, you're intoxicated without support, or you're being isolated. People solo travel all the time.
Mm-hmm.
People solo travel all the time. But if you're going to solo travel, you need to make sure that you are having the economic, independence to do that, making sure that you're clear about unwanted sexual expectations, making sure that you're very wary around unfamiliar people and locations and things like that. So in that kind of clip, again, I think that there was like an imbalance. I don't think that there was anything wrong with what the context of what she was getting
Mm-hmm.
at, but it was very much ignoring the very like the safety advice of what going alone can do.
Mm-hmm. And that's I want to say Smexpert 101, but that like the framing of that is accurate for somebody who is in the field,
Mm-hmm.
right? And someone who has, gained enough skills and some notoriety in the work that they do to, go to like a restaurant, go to a bar by yourself or with somebody on watch, as you find your trick, then yeah, you do want
Mm-hmm.
to do that in an isolated place, but also a controlled place too. So, one where your safety is considered at all times, um, so that when you do find your trick, be it someone that you've already made arrangements with or somebody that you're picking up because you just happen to be there, like if on vacation and I'm like in Dubai and I'm trying to find somebody to, pay for my next stay, I would go there isolated or with somebody on watch and, make myself seem available. And then, essentially vet out the person before any
Mm-hmm.
type of thing were to exchange. But
Right.
it's not something that you can just learn just from like watching the video. It really takes practice to know how those conversations go, which is the thing that Woo Lady is not necessarily, giving those people or teaching them on how to identify someone who can be a potential problem versus someone who can be a safer trick than
Mm-hmm.
the ones that you can get, especially in Miami,
Exactly.
and how to avoid the dangers of what will help me identify, oh, this person may be a problem. Um, not not that it's automatically always known, but the red flags to look out for, right?
Mhm.
And the lack of sharing that helps me see that the intentions are not of securing that person's safety whenever they become involved or become a part of whatever it is that she got playing going on, of bringing them to Miami, right? And
Yeah.
even whenever, like, I really focus in on whenever people who are discussing things of in this matter, if they're leaning against the girl's girl, if they're leaning against
Right.
having your community there for safety, because why are we reducing safety? Why are we trying to say, put your trust in me and not the people that you're in community with, right?
Mhm.
What is the intention behind telling people to distance themselves away from the people who could potentially be, um, I guess, a voice of reason or a naysayer in the things that I'm trying to involve myself with,
Yeah.
right? Why am I
Yeah.
looking for people to automatically be that yes person and not the person that will be like, hey, you sure you want to do this? Right? So it's like those are the
Yeah.
things that I really look at in the approach.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's very interesting, like when you bring up like the word, the word trick, because I think like the phrase trick itself, like I don't know, like for some reason, I don't know, for me, like it conceals like a struggle over who is like exploiting whom, right? Because if we're in a situation, or at least this is what I tend to think, I like a woman may believe like this man is the trick because I persuaded him to spend thousands of dollars on me, right? The man may believe the woman is the purchase party, right? I spent
Mhm.
thousands, so she now owes me access, right? And then if we're looking at, whereas if we're on the outside of it, or if you want to say like a third party, may like regard both of them as like the opportunity, right? I can connect financially vulnerable women to wealthy men, generate content, sell advice, collect fees, or even gain, just social access. So that is, why I think this kind of thing can't, just be discussed as, like merely as, women just in quote unquote getting money, right? We
Mhm.
need to ask like, okay, well, are there people who know, right, about this kind of full arrangement that's going on? Do we know who is controlling the setting around this, how this is taking place? Who possesses the most money, right? Who bears, physical risk, all these sorts of things. And I was watching like a reaction video to Lady Wu, and somebody brought up this the phrase, and it really had me to think about this a little bit deeper, how they said like, oh, really what she's talking about really is like the gentrification of hoeing. And I was like, hmm, that actually, to me, just in my thought process, I'm like, that actually has some truth in it because
Mhm.
historically, what we have called prostitution, escorting, transactional sex, if you want to say it, when you are sugaring or hustling, anything like that. We repackage that online now when we use words like tricking, or when we're trying to like live a soft life, or being spoiled, or luxury dating, right, or whatever. And no, those categories, any of those categories are not automatically identical. So as I'm
Mhm.
thinking, like a man may volunteer to buy a woman dinner or a Chanel bag is not necessarily purchasing sex. A consensual, kind of sugar daddy relationship or a sugar baby relationship is not automatically trafficking, right? A woman wanting
Mhm.
a wealthy partner does not make her a sex worker merely because class matters to her attraction, right? But if we're thinking about how that language gets softened, especially in online communities, it very much has this kind of underlying, kind of, I would say like fantasy aspect to it. It's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, he gives you expensive things because you're beautiful and you're smart and you live in your femininity and all these things and know how to handle men, right? But then that material reality involves, okay, I may have to give constant, this constant emotional labor, right? I got to
Mm-hmm.
manage like this, male entitlement. I got to lie or manipulate, or I got to, negotiate these sexual things, with him. It may include, hey, some theft and fraud. You never know these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought like that phrase about like the gentrification of hoeing I think is really useful, especially when it means, especially as we look at this social media culture, as like social media has cosmetically like upgraded, I think this transactional, kind of like, I don't know, like sexual economy in a way. I don't know if that's the right word to
Mm-hmm.
put it,
That's the
like
right
right way
word.
to put it. But it's to me, it's kind of like it's removed like much of the language that we previously warn people, when they're entering into dangerous, kind of situations, and stuff like that. But to me, it only becomes harmful when it's used to degrade, of course, like, folks who do sex work or portray every woman, again, who dates transactionally as naive or, immoral or, trafficked, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think that, that we just have some prime differences.
Yeah, and I like the that use of gentrification of whoring
Oh,
because I feel like that is essentially what's happening here because yeah, like and that's another reason why um I see Wu Lady as a madam is the use of the word trick in how she's communicating those things because it
mhm,
does make it seem as though that she is the one that's in power and what we many people know that when it comes to a person who's being trafficked they do not have power and that's part of the reason why especially historically why there was the use of the word John is another name.
mhm,
John has no face. John has no title. John has no history. John is just somebody who happens to be sharing the room with me today. John just happens to be a male figure. John just happens to be a body. And I have to
mhm,
engage with a John in order for me to have some sense of safety, some sense of security, some sense of payment, some sense of lifestyle, some aspect of what others consider human while I don't have full autonomy and access of myself. But I do recognize a John,
yeah,
right? Trick gives more of an idea of I do get to manipulate and gain something from them. Where you may hear trick being used more often in like a strip club than with someone who's being trafficked because I do have a little bit of power in the club. Because I do
mhm,
have that security. I do have someone who will be there to make sure I get my money, right? Um, and to frame a lot of these things as you know this person is going to be the trick here removes the real dangers that some of these people may actually be in, especially in Miami. Like I saw a couple of creators who live in Miami who's just like, oh, she is setting these people up to be sent off somewhere. She is
mhm,
setting people up to come to these clubs, not knowing these streets and how these streets work, just to be the next person that gets lost in Miami, who gets I forget exactly the phrasing, but gets hooked on drugs,
mhm,
who ends up being sold into sex trafficking for real because they don't know the ropes. They don't know
okay,
what that the Miami street life looks like. And she's selling a fantasy of real experiences that can really have a huge deterrence on a lot of these young girl lives.
mhm,
Um,
Yeah.
And
And
a lot of it's just fantasy at the end
yeah.
of the day.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought that up because as I was, like I said, while I was listening to some clips, I was also hearing like some people like defending her as well. And some of the defenses I kind of like, again, had some pushback with or found very like one-sided or complicated. So there was one that I viewed where the person was talking about, well, like Lady Wu, like, she's just giving her audience what it wants, what they want. Like, and to me, it's kind of like, yeah, the content receives the most views, and views generate money. I mean, that's the whole reason of content. And that may explain why she continues it, but it doesn't ethically justify it though. Like
Hmm.
audience also like we also reward humiliating public conflicts, right? We reward reckless financial advice, these extreme dieting things when it comes to our body, these horrible relationship tactics or whatever, right? A creator deciding to maximize whatever receives engagement is making a business decision, and that creator remains responsible for foreseeable harms attached to their messages and or attached to their products, if they're selling anything or whatever. So the platform incentive is important because Woo Lady may earn money whether or not her audience successfully tricks anyone, right? She benefits from the controversy, the response videos, the aspirations, and all these things. So the fantasy itself is monetized.
Hmm.
So that was, I kind of had a pushback for that. And now the one thing that somebody did say that I thought that they made a good point, but then okay, we kind of got into a little bit of elitism, right? Somebody said that women should already have money before entering wealthy spaces, right? So her I think this person, like, her basic point was that the less economically dependent you are on a stranger, the more freely you can say no and leave, right? So someone who can afford like her own, lodging, transportation, meals, flights, home, everything like that is less easily controllable through those
Hmm.
resources. But and so that point, okay, I was seeing her point with that. However, I think that argument becomes very, very like class elitist when it suggests that, okay, well, wealthy men give substantial resources only to women who already earn substantial resources.
Mm.
So what are you saying? So like poorer women should simply what, just get their money up? So that to me, that logic, becomes another version of, oh, okay, well, the victim should have known better.
Yeah,
Wealth,
I agree.
yeah, wealth does not eliminate SA or
It doesn't.
coercion, or when somebody has their drink, tampered, or stalking or violence. It doesn't obscure any of those things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I agree with you there, and I think the better argument would be is highlighting the importance of having your own before going to these spaces,
Right.
and just keeping it there because yeah, it and even when it comes to educators who do help people learn the tricks of the game
Mm-hmm.
of becoming a sex worker, they will tell you that don't go on any trip out of the country if you don't have the funds to make it back on your own. Do not, ask anybody, do not create the space for you to be flown any place if you don't have the tickets or the finances to make it back home, regardless of if you're going one state over or to the other side of the US. Make sure that you have the funds to protect yourself if you were to travel, because if you do get in a situation where the person is lying, you want
Mm-hmm.
to make sure you have a flight risk, you have a flight back, or if you get into a situation where they're asking of something that you cannot provide for them, that when they try to, um, pull the rug from under your feet, that you still have some type of security, because it is a risky game.
Mm.
And to reduce as much risk as possible, having some form of financial security on your part is
Right.
only helpful because there's been many of tellings. Actually, there was I forget her name, but it was on T.S. Madison's Outlaws,
Mm.
where this woman, she was talking about her experience with this wealthy guy. I think he was an athlete who wanted to see her out in Mexico, I believe. And he was like, "Oh no!" Like he had already sent her money and whatnot for some other thing that she did for him. And while she's out celebrating her birthday, she posts something on social media with this guy that she was in Mexico with, and he got jealous, got upset, and called his bank to do a stop payment or to say that it was fraud so that he can get his money back. Essentially, taking what money she had, but she also had money in her account to make it home, right?
Mm.
So stuff
Yeah.
like this is important to know happens for those who engage in sex work because you don't know the mentality of the people fully or
Right.
what they
Yeah.
will do that could put you at a disadvantage, right?
Exactly.
And any person who's not giving you the horrors as well, who's not telling you this is what you need to do to make sure that you are secure and that you are protected, are more than likely just focusing on exploiting you. And that exploitation can just be your interest in their content.
Mm.
You watching their lives or engaging in these things or hoping that they can put you on, so grifting you.
Yeah.
Um, but if they're not really trying to give you the well-rounded view of what to expect and going into this
Mm.
sex work environment, or these come up events, then you're the tool.
Yeah.
You're the thing that they're using. You are the product. You're not a business owner in this. You're now a worker for
Right.
me.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing. And I think to, wrap up this, I think, when I was thinking about like the title and the phrasing about her platform, as far as like saying, trafficking and stuff like that, and, like I say, to me, trafficking, of course, can involve psychological, financial, reputational, control, rather than I think a lot of times people just associate trafficking with just kidnapping. But of course, we know
Hmm.
that there's a lot of other factors, to it. So I think that I would be more willing to, accept the aspect of, her being a person who traffics if there were, reports of, her personally inviting, these women to Miami under false pretenses. If she was paying for travel and then declared that they owed her, if she was arranging meetings with these men involving expected, sexual, things, withholding transportation or lodging or providing drugs or encourage, incapacitation or any of those things. Like to me, like that to me moves into actionable things as far
Hmm.
as trafficking goes. But I do think that for what she is doing, it's I'm not going to say it's well intentioned, but it is to say, like, I think that there's a way it could be reframed if she's wanting, and I don't know the woman, so can't speak to her intentions. But to me, I think if she wanted to present herself as a mentor, kind of like in this kind of era, she could just be explicit with the messages that she gives to say, like, hey, don't travel without enough money to return on your own. Keep your own lodging. Don't let strangers hold your phone or your bank cards or identification. Never assume a gift has no expectations. Clarify those boundaries. Don't surrender no type of gifts or earnings or anything like that. So if it moved into more of like safety planning, and of course safety
Hmm.
planning does not guarantee that some sort of predator is not going to cause harm, and responsibility always belongs to the perpetrator. But having independent aspects like transportation, public meeting locations, these and making sure like you have exit strategies. It can just help reduce that isolation and dependence. So I think the larger thing for me is that I don't necessarily simply say that, she's recruiting people into the nature of sex trafficking, but what I do think is that she is monetizing a
Hmm.
fantasy that encourages these very aspects of financial vulnerable and inexperienced women into high risk, very sexually ambiguous encounters with wealthy strangers. And
Hmm.
especially if you are somebody who is unfamiliar with the city or infrastructure and things like that, it can definitely lead to a lot of safety concerns. So,
Yeah, yeah. And I can agree with that because again, yeah, like you said, we don't really know her. But my only caveat is that this is what new age
mm,
trafficking does look like.
mm,
And it's the I can't do wrong if you chose to do the actions yourself kind of
mm,
framework. You chose to come to the city, you chose to come here for this purpose, you selected these things for yourself. I just provided the opportunity for you, right?
mm,
What happens after you get here is on you,
mm,
right? And it's a way, especially legally speaking, it is a way to um, disconnect myself with whatever happens
mm,
once you get here. Because what I did, I just, told you how I do the things. You not being able to accomplish what I do is not a personal failing on me. It's on you because maybe it was something that you did that was different from what I advised, right?
exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
so,
and at the end of the day, you may not, in my eyes, you may not be a convicted, a convicted pimp of any kind,
hmm.
but if you are influencing women towards situations where pimps, predators, and other, coercive men can operate, if you want to call that empowerment, then empowerment also means that you're including aspects of full disclosure, right? You are
Hmm.
including aspects of what it means to have independent transportation and lodging, control of your money and your sexual boundaries and all this type stuff. Because otherwise, if we talking about, as the people tend to say, about securing the bag, right? If you are selling the bag, then I feel like, well, somebody else may be calculating the price of it, so you may want to be careful.
Right, right,
So,
exactly.
so
And my I guess my final words. So we definitely can't get into that last topic. We'll say that for next time. But like the one I'll post the chapter 3 of my book in the show notes for people if you want to get a understanding of what that process of grooming to be trafficked looks like. So that's going to be there for anybody who would like to look into that. But like stuff like this like with Wu Lady and whatnot reminds me of situations like with Natalie Nunn in Baddies and
mhm,
how people, I choose to sh come to this show for this purpose, and next thing you know, there's random contracts being signed of me being the dating partner of some celebrity that, supposed to make me look good,
mhm,
make them look good, and now I'm in this gambit of I'm in this relationship, that relationship, and we're just trying to figure out what's happening here. Why are there
mhm.
contracts being signed about my personhood? And
Exactly.
then there's even that cult of that lady who's all about sprinkle sprinkle. That was a fascinating time. But a lot of that stuff used that same language of, hey, let's talk about empowerment, how we get our own, and how we, essentially suck these, excuse my language, audience, but suck these niggas dry of their coin. But like, we get, it's just fascinating to see one, the repetitive nature of the internet, but also how these things continue in these online spaces and the lack of protections, um, because the information, though helpful for those people who do want to get into sex work, uh, is necessary to be able to provide that. But also, we need to really investigate the source. And I think that's where a lot of us fail because you don't have full control of your algorithm because a lot of people don't know what they're about to see on the next swipe.
Exactly.
So I find this person, they're giving me this free information. So I'm going to lock in and really focus in on what they're providing me because I'm trying to learn the tricks of the game.
Mhm.
But I also don't have the know-how to recognize whether or not this person is selling me a dream or selling me the reality. And I think Wu Lady and many like her, they benefit from the lack of what's that word? It starts with a D. Not
Discernment.
decisiveness, discernment. Thank you so
Discernment.
much.
Mhm.
They lack the discernment to understand the difference between who she is, and what I'm looking for. And is this person really here to protect me as I venture out in this very, very dangerous environment of what sex work means and what that brings to my life.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Any last words before we wrap things up?
No, I think that was it.
Awesome, awesome. Well, audience, thank y'all so much for tuning in to Melanin and
Yes.
Moonlight, your late night space for deep, thought-provoking conversations about sex, culture, and the well-being of the Black community. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast to keep the conversations going. Until next time, keep the vibes flowing and your mind open. Bye.
Bye.